Okay, I say that we go ahead and get started here since we are a couple minutes over. Catherine will be the pro tem for tonight's meeting, and I assume probably for our regular February meeting. Just a few housekeeping items though before we start. This should be a pretty brief meeting as it was originally intended to be canceled, but we had a zoning case to hear. We won't have any staff reports tonight or a public agenda. I know some of you might have questions about the vacancy process when we get to the board agenda, and I'll be happy to answer those to the best of my ability. As a reminder, we do need to stay focused on the process. Tonight's meeting is not an appropriate platform for any discussion that gets political in nature. So with that said, we are not going to entertain any questions or statements from or addressed to potential candidates tonight, okay?
That's good.
All right, Catherine, you want to take us away?
Yeah. So it is 6:34 and I'm calling to order the District 3 Advisory Board for January 6th, 2021. Welcome to everyone. Has everyone had a chance to look at tonight's agenda? Are there any questions or additions? Okay, if there's no questions, I would take a motion to approve that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from our December 2nd, 2020 meeting? Any additions or corrections for those? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Great. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Great. So now we move on to the new business, and it looks like Matt Williams is here to present.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming on for just this quick case. We only have one case tonight. It's a conditional use 2020-38. The applicant's requesting a conditional use to bring the existing accessory apartment on this property into compliance. The accessory apartment is located behind the primary residence, which is to the west of it. The accessory apartment is roughly 30 feet by 15 feet. And the rest of the site is developed with a storage shed, a garage, and then a single family residence. This property that's zoned single family, and the zoning code does allow accessory apartments by conditional use permit on single family zoning. And the accessory apartment is defined as a dwelling unit that might be wholly within or from the single family residence. There are supplementary regulations in the zoning code that are required to be followed for an accessory apartment, and those are in your staff report, and the applicant has indicated that they plan to comply with all of those regulations. Of course, this falls within the established central area, which encourages situations like this, conditionally, or the accessory apartments, as well as other infill strategies. And the comprehensive plan designates this area as residential, so this fits within that plan as well. Based on this, staff is recommending that the request be approved with a couple normal conditions, and also because this was built without the building department knowing about it, we're going to require that they provide proof of getting building permits at the time, or get an inspection to make sure that the building is up to code. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Has all the utilities been permitted?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Has all the permits been permitted, like the water and the gas and electricity? Are they up to code?
Let's take a look here. We have some unique requirements on this. The water and the sewer has to be the same as the main dwelling unit. The electric, gas, telephone, and cable can be separate. And so I apologize. I don't know if they have those services, but I know that water and sewer and everything's available to that property.
Well, a lot of them accessory properties had a small, a very small inlet because there's one or two bulbs in it, you know. It's designed for something other than an apartment at the time. It was built probably a shed. And I was just curious if the wiring is up to code.
Oh, the wiring. I don't know that, but one of the conditions will be that they have to either prove that they got building permits at the time it was built, and that would include, you know, an inspection by electrical, or that they can get a building permit now, you know, an inspection of the property to make sure it's up to code. So we'll make sure that that's up to code.
This is Jared. I just had one question. So I couldn't quite understand the question that he asked a minute ago, but so this was actually built as an apartment, or was it a garage that was transformed into an apartment?
Let me see if I can tell by the picture.
Yeah, I was trying to look on Google Maps and I can't tell.
I'm not sure I'm not sure if it was not built as the garage, I don't believe, because there is a garage next to it. My guess is it was built as a storage shed, or potentially as an accessory apartment years ago. Maybe they didn't get permission at the time. Maybe it was a past owner. Maybe they didn't need permission. It was so far back. I'm not sure about that.
See, my only question is, if you built something like that, surely you would know that you need to get, my opinion, if you're going to build something like that, you would know that you would need to get the permits. That's my only problem with this. I mean, I'm sure it's going to approve, but I think if it was built, they probably knew that they needed to get the permits and just didn't do it, and they got caught, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah, and I can't speak on this specific case if the applicant's not here, and I don't see the applicant here. But I did deal, I can't remember if it was in this district or not, just about a month ago with something similar. And it was a neighborhood where there were kind of several of the houses on the street had these accessory apartments in the backyard. And I think that it was just so long ago that it was the permitting wasn't required back then. You know, maybe they got building permits to build the unit, but to use it as an accessory apartment, they didn't have to get the conditional use process or something like that. So yeah, you know, if this was built 50 years ago, that's one thing. If it was built last year, you know, that's a different thing.
Matt, the dimensions are 30 feet by 15 feet. Now, I haven't bought a whole lot of houses, but that seems small. I think I have an area rug rolled up downstairs that's about that size. Isn't that kind of small? I mean, isn't there like, don't you have to have a certain square footage per person? Like you can't have like, how many people could live in that thing?
You know, these are all very good questions you guys are giving me tonight.
I'm sorry. I mean,
I
sure
know
it was checked out. I don't think it would have gotten to this point to come to DAB if all this stuff hadn't been checked out. But that really jumped out at me at 30 by 15. That the site is currently developed with a single family residence, the accessory apartment, comma, a garage, comma, and a storage shed.
Well, that is something that either will have been checked out when they got building permits in the past that they'll have to provide proof of, or it will be checked out when they get an inspection following as a requirement of this. What I will say is that we don't have any size requirement on a house per se. there are a few technical requirements. When we were looking into tiny homes, I remember finding out the exact number, but it's very, very small. You know, it's something like the bathroom has to be, you know, 2, and the kitchen has to be, you know, 3 feet from the sink to something, you know, weird requirements like that, that technically give a requirement for how big it needs to be. But that's, you know, for a single family house, I think that this is probably more of a, you know, room with maybe a little wet bar or something and a bathroom. We don't have a requirement for the
I
size
mean,
of that.
when I first saw this, that's what I thought too. I thought this isn't going to be a place where people are actually going to be living. It's going to be more of a party room, is what it seemed like to me. But
well, it's you know, it's not a shed or something. They could build a shed back there for a party room or something theoretically. This could be a place, you know, a room with a bathroom and maybe like I said, a wet bar where, you know, a mother-in-law stays, or, you know, who knows how they're going to be used. But
Matt, I have a question.
yes.
When somebody applies at the planning commission to do something like this, you know, you have to have an inspection to make sure it's up to code, but does anybody go out to the house prior to bringing it up to us and look at what they're dealing with, or do you take it on their word until they get the official inspection? Have you seen this space?
Well, I've been out there and the owner wasn't there at the time, so I just took photos from the street, which, well, let me pull up the right one. This was, I assume I didn't actually get photos of it.
But there's nothing preliminary prior to an inspection for up to code. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
I did look at the South Central Neighborhood Plan, since this would be considered within the plan, and kind of looked to see if there's anything in there that would guide us. And we have a statement about the vision for the plan, which is like a mixture of different kinds of housing options, with townhouses, apartments, and duplexes. So I feel like an accessory dwelling kind of complies with that. It's another option for a smaller housing choice. So yeah, and then there was another section where it talked about land use categories, and that specifically said that accessory dwelling units and duplexes could be appropriate in locations where compatibility with surrounding single family uses can be maintained. So I mean, it's just kind of looking at the context, but there's nothing that says we shouldn't have them at all. So
there's also something about it, and I might be misremembering, but I thought in the places for people, they talked about it having a similar architectural layout as the main dwelling. This, you know, there's no indication that this would meet with that, although I don't know that places for people has really been fully accepted yet, so maybe that's not relevant.
Yeah, the people, that would be if they can provide, like before they build it, if they provide us, you know, with a drawing of the house that shows that it's going to match the appearance of the house. The intention behind that would be that, you know, if they fit all of those guidelines, then they wouldn't have to go through this process. But I can say that one of the supplementary regulations that is required for this one in the staff report is that the appearance of the accessory apartment shall be compatible with the dwelling unit and with the character of the neighborhood. So that it's not as rigorous as the places for people requirements, having to, you know, match colors and siding like that, but it does need to be in character with it.
Okay, I mean,
Go ahead, Richard.
well, I was just going to say, I mean, if that is the case, if it needs to be in character, then I would think that something more than an overhead shot would be useful, right, for DABs to look at, and just to make sure that we're not making decisions that are going to anger any of our neighbors.
Right.
That's-
And that's a good point. Usually when we, come and do a conditional use for an accessory apartment, the apartment's not already built. And we don't require, drawings or anything to prove that the thing that they're gonna build is gonna be incompatibility with the neighborhood. But I do understand of how do we verify that it is.
We want to make sure that we're always maintaining some pride of living in a particular neighborhood, right? And so that's why I bring it up. It seems like it's a relatively trivial matter for someone who wants to put a building in to make sure that it complies with these guidelines, which hopefully are, approved of by the community as a whole, the city as a whole.
Some sort of future requirement for the applicants to provide their own photos of things, like in a backyard. Because from the street, you couldn't really see it, and, I can't go on their property without their permission. And that's a good point to bring up.
Ronald.
One of my concerns is the fire department has a aluminum wire mandate or something that says you can't use aluminum wire anymore. Is there any chance this old building has aluminum wire in it that would cause a fire, possibly in a later date?
That's something that I am unaware of. If the applicant was here, you'd be able to ask them. I can definitely see if we can get that answer out of them at the Planning Commission hearing tomorrow.
Just concerned with the way the building is situated near the house. If it caught on fire, it would, it's only 3 feet from the house. I have a concern about aluminum wire being in any building anymore, because wire could start a fire just almost anywhere.
Are there any other questions? Any questions from the public? Any more from the DAB?
I would move that we accept the recommendation and approve the request.
All right. Do
I'll
we have a
second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.
And I'll be abstaining.
Great. Motion carries.
Okay, for the record then, is that one abstention and the rest are in support?
Yes.
Correct.
Is
Okay.
that 5-0?
601. So 6 in support, 1 abstention.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for getting together tonight.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for answering our questions.
Thanks, Matt.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
So now we'll move on to the board agenda. Are there any reports from around the district?
I do want to recognize really quick that we have Lauren Hirsch on here. She's a District 3 library appointee. I know we're on the board agenda, but I did want to give her an opportunity if she wanted to share any updates about the District 3 library, because we got some big news yesterday on it.
Yeah, so you all know, and I thank you for letting me attend your meeting just before the national election. So I guess that was beginning of November. I talked extensively then about the beauties of having a library in District 3, and now it's well underway in construction. It'll be opening in February, and as of yesterday, City Council voted to name it the Dr. Ronald W. Walters Library Branch. There was a community outreach effort, and some of your other neighbors and people in your community may have questions about that. So I thought I'd just highlight some aspects of it for you right now. There were 2 points where the library board engaged the community and asked for recommendations from neighbors. So one was just to get a giant list of names that people hoped the naming committee, the library board would consider. And we got over 70, some of them repeated, because there were actually over 100 recommendations total. Really great ones. It was a hard job. And we, as a board, narrowed it down to 5, which we then put out to the community again in a survey where people could, click which one they most preferred. And then the library board could use that information when making the decision on which one to recommend to the city council. And so, unfortunately, some of the people in our community thought that that was a vote, like an actual vote, as in, maybe it's a secret ballot, you can only vote once, it's highly controlled, and whatever the outcome is with the highest number gets to be the choice. But that was not the design. It really was a survey. And the one that got the most numerous, even though it wasn't a scientific survey, and I know for a fact some people voted repeatedly, the one that got the highest was actually Carl Brewer Library Branch, and then Meadowlark Library Branch, and Ron Walters. And the library board took all the information that we had in front of us, and each person, we did a rank choice voting process. So what that meant was each library board member, we discussed a little bit and then shared our top 3 in order of preference. And then from that is how we ended up landing on Ronald W. Walters, and city council preferred that they honor his PhD by calling it Dr. Ronald W. Walters. And the big benefit here is that I got to learn a lot about this Wichita native that really has contributed majorly to our civic life here, and is someone that I think has been worthy of an honor for a long time. And I'm thankful that we got to do that now by honoring him with a library in his name right here in District 3. So this is now the first library branch that we have had in this district for a while. It's been, I think, at least over a decade since there's been a library branch in District 3. So it's good news. My personal goal is that we can keep engaging the community and help people understand what resources are available to them. The city chose to invest in our district by putting a library here because it has a measurable impact on people's lives. And so the more we can do to spread the word about the resources and everything that people can access, including internet, including, of course, books, but we all know libraries amount to a lot more than that these days. So my hope is that you are proud to have that here. There will be a ribbon cutting, but it's not necessarily going to be a big event because of COVID times. But we'll keep planning more as we go, because I want to make sure that the community is really engaged as we go forward. And I'm committed to that for a long-term investment.
Lauren, are you up for questions?
I am, yeah.
I think the name sounds great, and we've learned a lot about the gentleman in the paper over the last few weeks. Will there be any kind of a display? That's a bad choice of words, about the man and his accomplishments. So when somebody goes to the library, instead of saying, "Well, who was this gentleman?" it'll have some kind of information on him, so people know more about him.
I'm personally committed to that. I actually don't know, I haven't had a chance to talk to library staff about, what's possible, how can that work, what's in the works already. But Brandon Johnson, during yesterday's council meeting, did request something along those lines. And I think that's how we really honor somebody, not just by naming something, but by really helping people, providing the setting for people to learn more about what he stood for, and especially his scholarly life, which is the real reason we wanted to honor him with a library specifically.
Well, that sounds great. Keep us posted on that, will you please?
Yeah, happy to.
Any other questions for Lauren?
Lauren, I just want to say spectacular work on behalf of the library board, because I know that had to have been a huge job to try to choose like what name to be recommended with all of those different names to choose from. I don't know, that would just be a difficult choice, I think.
Well,
So,
it's
great
unfortunate.
job.
Thank you for that. And you know what's unfortunate is that choosing a name means not choosing other very worthy names. And
Yes.
people start assuming reasons for that, you know, and get personally invested. But I hope that we can all just really be proud of what was chosen, but then hit the ground running, you know, with all the positive aspects of what this is going to do for District 3.
Yeah.
So when are patrons going to actually be able to, I guess there's no way of knowing when we're going to actually be able to go back into libraries, I guess.
Well, we're going to do, okay, so there'll be a sort of a soft opening in February because I think it'll still be curbside service at that point. But then we're going to do a video tour at that point that people can attend online. And, you know, I want to make a splash of it later. Like I would even personally just kind of do a citizens event, you know, to invite people to come and talk and celebrate when we're able to finally do that. So, but I'll try to organize it with the city and the staff, but you know, other things come up and I want us to do something at least as a community.
Any other questions out there? Lauren, thank you for coming. I really appreciate you keeping us all in the loop and letting us know what's going on. So it is something to be proud of and for us to spread the word about. So I'm glad that you let us know.
Yeah, and we'll engage organizations and the schools in the area. And they're even talking about making public transit like some direct routes to help get closer. And Maddie's been great helping with that. So we're trying to make it as approachable as possible for people so they really utilize it. And just as an aside, I want to thank you all as my DAB representatives because you've got your own tough job, and thank you so much for everything you're doing and the diligence you're putting into this time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other reports from around the district? Anything to share or update us on?
Well, I wanted to say that the flock system that the police department presented to us at our last DAB meeting, if you remember, it's the license plate reader, was instrumental in apprehending those youth that broke into and accosted an elderly neighbor. And they found those kids pretty quickly. And so I was pretty excited about that when I first heard about it. And it's good to see that it's continuing to work as expected. I know that I was also excited when the ShotSpotter came in, but I don't think that's had quite as much success. I can't say that for sure, but I haven't heard any press releases from the police department talking about how it's done anything. But I am very excited about Flock, so I look forward to hearing more about the implementation of that tool.
I'm glad you brought that up, Richard, because I would kind of like to get an update from the police department. Maybe Maddie can help facilitate this about how our ShotSpotter technology is doing, because I think maybe you've heard the same thing, Richard. I don't know, but I had heard that maybe it wasn't working at all. And the city had spent a lot of money on some of this software, and it wasn't providing us what we were wanting it to provide. So if we could get a report from the police department about that, that would be great.
I agree.
I will pass that along before our next meeting. I'll let the CP officers know, typically come and present that is something that they would like, that you guys would like to be briefed on.
Anything else to bring up?
Is it for open discussion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Maddie, if I can't talk about this, then shut me up. On step 3 for the process, where it talks about being presented with instructions and a list of questions for candidates, are those the only questions we're allowed to ask, or if we have questions that don't come within that realm?
I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be restricted to that because the questions need to be uniform for each potential candidate. So it will be a pretty defined process. And yeah, you guys will be given a list of questions that we will not deviate from when interviewing the eligible candidates.
Are we allowed to submit questions?
I know the questions are developed internally. I can check on that. If you have a question that you think is prudent that you would like asked, go ahead and email that specific question to me and I will submit it. But the manager will be signing off on the final list of questions, which are developed internally, ultimately.
Wow. Why do they even come to the DAB board?
Well, you guys are the ones vetting us, sending the candidates along. We just gotta make sure we have a list of questions that are formed for everyone.
Yeah, but when they're talking to us, if something spontaneous comes up, I hate to be muzzled. That's all. Thank you.
I'll get some more clarification on that, okay?
Thank you.
Maddie, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if all the DAB members have them or not, but I went down and got my fast pass, my visitor's badge to the city building. And I know that they're not taking any visitors. And I did my renewal, but I've never been able to try it out if it works. Is there a way I can just email you offline to make sure my badge still works to get into the city building?
Yes. Yeah, I can try to figure out who I'd need to ask about that.
Okay. And are we still planning on doing the in-person for the next DAB?
Our next regularly scheduled DAB will be on February 3rd, I believe. That will be virtual. We actually have a significant agenda coming up for that. We're going to get an update on the Clap Park master plan, and we will also hear from housing on their action plan for like CDBG funding. I'm not sure when the special DAB meeting will be scheduled.
Okay.
That one will be in person, and I anticipate it's going to be early February.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure we'll likely be holding that at City Hall.
Maddie, do we need to get a pass to get into City Hall or?
No, I'll make sure staff or myself is letting people in. We'll sort that out, the fine details out, and I will keep everyone in the loop.
Any other questions related to the process that anyone has for Maddie?
I'd make a motion we adjourn.
All right. Do we have a
Seconded.
second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Great. Motion carries. See you
Thank you.
February 3rd.
All right. Have a wonderful month,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks,
You
everyone.
too.